Martinez walked through the empty corridors of Trade Station Meridian, his boots making soft sounds on the metal floor. His shift was almost over, and he was looking forward to getting some sleep. The station was quiet at this hour, with most of the traders and diplomats already in their quarters. Only the night crew remained, keeping watch over the massive hub where dozens of alien species came to do business. He had been working as a security officer on the station for 2 years now. Before that, he had served in Earth's military, but he had grown tired of the constant action. The station offered him something different, a chance to keep the peace without the violence he had seen during his service. Most nights were calm, just routine patrols and the occasional drunk alien who needed help getting back to their ship. Turned a corner into one of the maintenance corridors, a shortcut he often used on his way back to his quarters. The lights here were dimmer, and the air had a slight chill. He was halfway down the corridor when he heard something, a small sound like a whimper. He stopped and listened carefully. There it was again. It came from behind a stack of storage containers near the wall, approached slowly, his hand moving to the scanner on his belt. He had learned to be careful around corners, even on a peaceful station. But when he looked behind the containers, he froze. Two small figures huddled together in the shadows. They were children, that much was clear, though they were not human. Their skin was a pale blue color, and they had large eyes that reflected the dim light. Recognized them as one of the more prominent species in the Galactic Council. The children stared at him with obvious terror, their small bodies pressed against the wall. Held up his hands and stepped back, giving them space. He had dealt with frightened aliens before, and he knew that sudden movements only made things worse. The older child, who looked to be about 8 years old in human terms, wrapped her arms around the smaller one protectively. "It's okay," said softly, keeping his voice low and calm. "I'm not going to hurt you." The children did not respond. They probably did not understand English, and knowledge of was limited to a few basic phrases. He slowly crouched down to their level, making himself less threatening. That was when he noticed the marks on their skin. Even in the dim light, he could see the bruises. Dark patches covered the older child's arms, and there were burns on the smaller one's hands. Fresh injuries, not old scars. Felt his jaw tighten, but he kept his expression neutral. Scaring them more would not help. He reached into his pocket slowly and pulled out a nutrition bar, part of his standard patrol supplies. He placed it on the ground between them and slid it forward gently. The children watched him but did not move toward the food. Sat down on the floor, crossing his legs and keeping his hands visible. "Take your time," he said, even though he knew they probably could not understand the words. Sometimes tone mattered more than language. They sat like that for several minutes, did not move, and the children gradually relaxed a fraction. The older one finally reached out and grabbed the nutrition bar. She tore it open and gave half to the smaller child before eating her own portion quickly, like someone who had not eaten in a while. Pulled out his water bottle next and offered it to them. This time, the older child took it more quickly. She helped the younger one drink first before taking some for herself. When she handed the bottle back, she looked directly at for the first time. "Safe?" she asked in broken Galactic Common, the trade language used across the galaxy. The word hit hard. This child was asking him if he was safe, if this place was safe. Whatever had happened to them, it had been bad enough to make them run and hide in a maintenance corridor. "Yes," said in Galactic Common, using one of the few words he knew well. "Safe." The older child seemed to understand. She spoke quickly to the younger one in their own language, and some of the fear left their faces. But then heard footsteps in the main corridor nearby, and both children tensed immediately, their eyes going wide with panic. Made a decision. He stood up slowly and gestured for them to follow him. "Come," he said, mixing English and gestures. "I'll help you." The older child hesitated, then nodded. She helped the smaller one stand, and they followed as he led them through the maintenance corridors. He knew these passages well, and he could get them to the medical bay without using the main routes. Whatever was going on, these children needed help, and the burns and bruises on their skin told him they needed it fast. They moved through the station quietly, checking each corner before they crossed any open areas. The children stayed close to him, and he noticed they both limped slightly. More injuries he had not seen in the dim light of the maintenance corridor. The medical bay was empty when they arrived, led them inside and locked the door behind them. He activated his communicator and called Lisa Grant, the station's medical officer and one of his closest friends. "Lisa, I need you in the medical bay right now," he said quietly, "and don't tell anyone you're coming." "What's going on?" Lisa's voice came back, concerned but professional. "Just trust me, please." There was a pause, then Lisa replied, "I'll be there in 5 minutes." Turned back to the children. They had sat down on one of the examination beds, huddled together again. The older child watched him carefully, while the smaller one had buried her face in her sister's shoulder. "It's okay," said again. "Lisa is a doctor, she'll help you." He sat down in a chair across from them and waited. His mind was already working through what he had seen. Those injuries were not accidents. Someone had hurt these children deliberately and recently. The question was who and why they had run. The medical bay's computer chimed suddenly, making all of them jump. Stood up and checked the display. It was a station-wide alert, the kind used for important announcements. The message made his blood run cold. Ambassador of the delegation had reported his 2 children missing. All station personnel were ordered to search for them and return them to their father immediately. The message included images of the 2 children currently sitting in the medical bay, staring at with growing fear. The door opened and Lisa rushed in. She stopped when she saw the children, her eyes widening. Then she saw the marks on their skin, and her expression changed to one of professional concern mixed with anger. She said slowly, "What have you gotten yourself into?" Looked at the children, then back at Lisa. "Something I can't walk away from." The smaller child had started crying silently, tears running down her blue cheeks. The older one held her tight and looked at with desperate eyes. She spoke one word again, a question this time. "Safe." Nodded firmly. "Safe," he promised, knowing even as he said it that keeping that promise was going to be harder than anything he had done before. Lisa moved quickly to the children, her medical training taking over. She pulled out her scanner and began examining them with gentle, careful movements. Watched as the device passed over the bruises and burns, recording data that made Lisa's face grow darker with each passing second. "How bad is it?" asked quietly. Lisa finished the scan and pulled him aside, keeping her voice low so the children would not hear. "This is systematic abuse. The burns are from energy weapons set to low power. The bruises show repeated strikes over time. And look at this." She pulled up the scan on her tablet, pointing to areas that glowed red on the display. Old fractures in the ribs, healed but visible. The smaller one has damage to her hands that suggests someone burned her deliberately when she reached for something. This has been going on for a long time. Felt rage building in his chest, but he forced it down. Getting angry would not help these children right now. "Can you treat them?" "Yes, but you saw that alert. Their father is ambassador. Do you know what that means?" "I know exactly what it means," said. "Diplomatic immunity. He can do whatever he wants and no one can touch him." Lisa looked at the children who were watching them nervously. "We have to report this. There are protocols." "And those protocols will send them right back to him," said. "You know how diplomatic immunity works. He'll take them and we'll never see them again. And next time he might hurt them worse for running away." Lisa was quiet for a moment, struggling with the decision. She was a doctor, sworn to help those in need. But she was also a station officer, bound by regulations and laws that protected diplomats like. "Treat them first," said. "Then we'll figure out what to do." Lisa nodded and returned to the children. She worked carefully, applying healing gel to the burns and using a bone knitter on the fractures. The older child watched everything closely, but she let Lisa work without fighting. The smaller one had stopped crying and seemed calmer now that someone was helping them. Activated his communicator again, this time calling Commander Greg Holland, the human diplomatic on the station. If anyone could help navigate the legal mess they were walking into, it was Greg. "I was about to call you," Greg said as soon as he answered. "Have you seen the alert about Ambassador's children?" "I've seen it," replied. "Greg, I need your help. Come to the medical bay and come quietly." "What have you done?" "The right thing, I hope. Just get here." Greg arrived 10 minutes later, slipping into the medical bay through a side entrance. He stopped when he saw the children, now covered in healing gel and looking slightly better. His eyes took in the injuries and his expression turned grim. "Tell me everything," he said. Explained how he had found them hiding in the maintenance corridor. Lisa showed him the medical scans, pointing out the evidence of long-term abuse. Greg studied the data carefully, his face showing the internal conflict knew he was feeling. "This is bad," Greg finally said. "Has full diplomatic immunity. Legally, we have to return his children to him." "I'm not doing that," said flatly. "If you refuse, you'll be arrested. You'll lose your job, maybe face charges, and they'll take the children anyway." "Then that's what happens," said, "but I'm not handing them over." The medical bay door suddenly chimed, someone requesting entry. Lisa checked the monitor and went pale. "It's Ambassador. He has station security with him." The older child made a small sound of fear and grabbed her sister, pulling her close. Both children looked at with terrified eyes. Walked to the door but did not open it. "Ambassador," he said through the speaker, "this is a medical facility. Your children are receiving treatment for their injuries." "Open this door immediately," his voice came back, angry and commanding. "Those are my children and you will return them to me now." "They need medical attention," said, keeping his voice level. "Once they're stable, we can discuss their situation." "There is nothing to discuss. I am their father and I have diplomatic immunity. You have no authority over me or my family." Greg stepped forward and activated his own communicator, speaking with careful diplomatic language. "Ambassador, this is Commander Greg Holland of Earth's Diplomatic Service. We are simply ensuring the medical welfare of your children as required by station safety protocols. Once the medical officer clears them, we will contact you immediately." There was a pause, then his voice came back even angrier. "You dare to keep my children from me? I will have you removed from this station. I will file complaints with the Galactic Council. Open this door now or face the consequences." Looked at the children. They were shaking, holding each other tight. The older one was whispering something to the smaller one, probably trying to comfort her. He thought about his own childhood, about feeling safe and protected. These children had never known that feeling. "No," said simply. The door controls beeped as someone tried to override the lock. Station security had that ability, and they were clearly following orders. Moved to the manual controls and engaged the emergency medical lockdown, a protocol designed to protect patients during crises. "What are you doing?" Lisa asked, though she did not try to stop him. "Buying time," said. The door stopped trying to open. Medical lockdowns required authorization from the station commander to override, and that would take time to arrange. Knew it was only a temporary solution, but it was something. Greg was already working his communicator, sending messages and making calls. "I'm contacting Earth's embassy. Maybe they can apply pressure, delay things long enough for us to find a legal option." "Is there a legal option?" asked. "I don't know," Greg admitted. "Diplomatic immunity is pretty absolute, but maybe we can argue medical emergency or temporary protective custody while we investigate." Outside the medical bay, they could hear shouting at the station security. His voice carried through the walls, angry and demanding. The children heard it too, and they pressed closer together on the examination bed. Walked over to them and knelt down, making himself their height. He did not know their language, but he tried to communicate with gestures and his tone. "It's okay," he said softly. "I won't let him hurt you." The older child studied his face for a long moment. Then she reached out and touched his hand, a small gesture of trust that felt enormous given what she had been through. She spoke in Galactic Common again, her voice barely a whisper. "You promise, safe?" Took her small hand gently. "I promise." The station's main computer chimed, and the commander's voice came over the speakers. "Officer Martinez, you are ordered to disengage the medical lockdown and allow Ambassador access to his children immediately. This is a direct order." Looked at Lisa and Greg. Both of them were watching him, waiting to see what he would do. He knew they could not help him if he the order. They had families, careers, lives that would be destroyed if they openly supported him. "I'm sorry," he said to them. "I'm about to make things very difficult for both of you." Lisa smiled slightly. "We're already here, we saw the injuries, we know what's happening." Greg nodded. "Whatever you decide, I'll do what I can through diplomatic channels." Stood and walked to the speaker. "Commander, I respectfully decline that order. These children have injuries consistent with systematic abuse. I am invoking medical emergency protocols to protect patients under my care." "You are not medical personnel, Officer Martinez." "I am the security officer present at a medical emergency. I have the authority to ensure patient safety." There was a long pause. Then the commander's voice came back, cold and formal. "Officer Martinez, you are hereby placed under arrest for insubordination and interference with diplomatic immunity. You will be confined to the medical bay until this situation is resolved. Security will remain posted at all exits." The speaker went silent. Outside, they could hear still demanding entry, his voice growing more frustrated. Station security was probably telling him that the situation was being handled, that would be punished, that his children would be returned soon. Sat down in a chair near the children. He had just ended his career and possibly his freedom. But when he looked at those two small faces, at the relief in their eyes because someone was finally protecting them, he knew he had made the right choice. Lisa finished treating the last of their injuries and came to sit beside him. "You know they'll eventually get in here, right? The commander will authorize the override and will take them." "I know," said, "but at least we tried. At least they'll know that someone cared enough to fight for them." Greg was still working his communicator, sending messages and making calls. "There might be something," he said. "Earth's government is responding. They want full medical documentation. They're talking about invoking some old treaty provisions." "Will it work?" asked. "I don't know, but they're not giving up and neither am I." The older child spoke then, her galactic common halting but clear enough to understand. "Human, why you help, not your children." Looked at her at those large eyes that had seen too much pain. "Because it's right," he said simply, "and because all children deserve to be safe." She seemed to consider this, then nodded slowly. She spoke to her sister in their own language, and for the first time since had found them, both children smiled slightly. The news spread through Trade Station Meridian faster than had expected. Within hours, every human on the station knew about the standoff in the medical bay. More importantly, the story had reached Earth and the other human colonies scattered across the galaxy. Sat on the floor near the children, who had finally fallen asleep on the examination bed. Lisa had given them something to help them rest, knowing their bodies needed time to heal. He watched them sleep, their small chests rising and falling peacefully, and wondered how long that peace would last. Greg had been on his communicator for hours, coordinating with Earth's government. Every few minutes, new messages came through and could see the tension building in his friend's face. "Talk to me, Greg," said quietly, not wanting to wake the children. "What's happening out there?" Greg looked up from his tablet, his expression tired but determined. It's bigger than I expected. The story hit the human news networks and people are angry, really angry. There are protests outside Galactic Council buildings on Earth. People are demanding that something be done. But can they do anything? Asked. Has diplomatic immunity? That's what everyone keeps saying, Greg replied. But humans are stubborn. Earth's government is looking for any legal avenue they can find. They've discovered that while law permits what they call disciplinary action, there's no requirement for it. They're arguing that the children should have the right to seek refuge. And will that work? Greg shrugged. The Galactic Council is meeting right now to discuss it, but you need to understand what's at stake here. If Earth pushes too hard on this, we could lose our council membership. We're still relatively new members, and a lot of species already think we're too emotional and unpredictable. Maybe they're right, said. Maybe we are too emotional, but that's not always a bad thing. The medical bay's door chimed again. Lisa checked the monitor and sighed. It's more humans. 5 crew members from the cargo section. They're asking if we need anything. Let them in, said. Lisa opened the door, and 5 humans entered carrying bags of food, water, and supplies. Recognized them from around the station, people he had shared meals with or passed in the corridors. They set everything down quietly, trying not to wake the children. We heard what you did, one of them said, a cargo handler named Pete Carson. Most of us think you're doing the right thing. Most asked. Pete looked uncomfortable. Some think you're making trouble for all of us. They're worried about what happens if Earth gets kicked out of the council. But the rest of us, we don't care about that. Those are kids in there. Hurt kids. What kind of people would we be if we just let it happen? Another crew member, a woman named Hayes, stepped forward. We brought legal documents too. Some of us have been researching council laws. There are precedents for asylum claims even for children. Not many, but they exist. Greg took the documents eagerly, scanning through them. This is good. This gives us something to work with. The crew members left after a few minutes, but could see the determination in their eyes. Whatever happened, he was not alone in this. The human community on the station had decided to stand with him. The hours passed slowly. Lisa monitored the children's vital signs, making sure they were healing properly. Greg worked through mountains of legal documents, searching for any loophole or precedent that could help. Just waited, knowing that eventually someone would make a decision about what happened next. The older child woke first, her eyes opening slowly. She looked around the medical bay, momentarily confused, then remembered where she was. She sat up carefully, wincing slightly from her injuries. "How do you feel?" Lisa asked, checking her with the medical scanner. The girl did not answer, but she pointed to her stomach and made an eating gesture. Lisa smiled and brought over some of the food the crew members had left. The girl ate slowly, more cautiously than before, like she was afraid the food might be taken away. "What's your name?" asked in Galactic Common, using his limited knowledge of the language. The girl paused, then answered. She pointed to her still sleeping sister. He said, pointing to himself. "Lisa," he gestured to the medical officer. "Greg," the diplomat waved from his seat. Nodded, committing the names to memory. She looked at the door, then back at, "Father still angry?" "Yes," said honestly. There was no point in lying to her. "He always angry," said quietly. "Since Mother died, he blame us." The simple statement hit hard. These children had lost their mother, and instead of comforting them, their father had made their lives worse. He felt his anger rising again, but he pushed it down. Did not need to see his rage. She needed to see his strength. The station's communication system activated, and the commander's voice filled the medical bay. "All personnel, attention. The Galactic Council has issued a ruling on the situation in the medical bay. Ambassador's diplomatic immunity is confirmed and absolute. The children must be returned to their father within the next standard hour, or Earth's representatives will be expelled from this station, and council proceedings will begin to remove humanity from the council entirely. The message ended, leaving silence in its wake. Had understood enough of the galactic common words to know what it meant. Her face went pale, and she grabbed her sister, who had woken up during the announcement. No, whispered, please no. Stood and walked to where the children sat. He knelt down in front of them, looking directly into their frightened eyes. Listen to me, he said firmly. I made you a promise. I said I would keep you safe. I don't break my promises. But council says, began. I don't care what the council says, interrupted. Some things are more important than council rulings. You are more important. Greg stood up, his communicator beeping constantly. Earth's government wants to talk to you directly. Took the communicator and activated the video function. The face of Earth's senior diplomat appeared on the screen, a woman named Phillips who had represented humanity at the council for the past decade. Officer Martinez, she said formally, I want you to understand the situation clearly. If you continue to refuse the council's ruling, Earth will face severe consequences. We will lose our council seat, our trading agreements will be endangered, and humanity's position in the galaxy will be severely weakened. Do you understand? I understand, said. And knowing this, will you comply with the ruling and return the children to their father? Looked at and huddled together on the bed. He thought about what would happen to them if he gave in. More abuse, more pain, maybe worse now that they had tried to escape. He thought about all the things humans valued, all the principles they claimed to stand for. No, he said simply, I will not. There was a pause. Philip studied his face through the screen and could see her making calculations, weighing options. Then she smiled just slightly. Good, she said. That was the right answer. Blinked in surprise. What? Officer Martinez, you need to understand something about humanity. We joined the Galactic Council because we believed it represented something good, something worth being part of. But we did not give up who we are to become members. And one of the things that defines us as humans is that we protect children. All children, regardless of species. She leaned closer to the screen. I have just received authorization from Earth's government. We are formally declaring that the medical bay is temporarily designated as human sovereign territory. We are invoking an old provision in our membership agreement that allows for emergency territorial claims in cases of humanitarian crisis. The children are now officially on human soil, and diplomatic immunity does not extend to our territory. Felt hope rising in his chest. Can you do that? We just did, said. Now this will cause problems, big problems. The council is not going to like it and will face opposition from multiple species. But here's what's going to happen next. We are going to present full medical documentation of the abuse. We are going to argue that while law may permit such actions, the children have the right to seek asylum under interstellar refugee protocols. And we are going to make it very clear that humanity will not compromise on this issue. What if the council votes against us? Asked. Then we leave the council, said simply. Earth's government has voted. We're done pretending that diplomatic immunity means we ignore child abuse. If the galaxy can't agree on that basic principle, then maybe we're better off outside the council anyway. Greg was staring at the screen in shock. You're talking about undoing decades of diplomatic work. I'm talking about doing what's right, replied. And I think most humans would agree with that choice. Officer Martinez, you're about to become very famous. The whole galaxy is watching this situation. Whatever happens next, know that Earth stands behind you. The screen went dark. Looked at Lisa and Greg, both of them processing what they had just heard. Then he looked at who was watching him with confusion. What happened? She asked in her broken galactic common. Smiled at her. Humans happened. We're going to fight for you. The next 24 hours were unlike anything had ever experienced. The medical bay had become the center of a galactic crisis. with the whole situation playing out on news networks across hundreds of worlds. Lisa had converted a corner of the medical bay into a small living area for the children. They had blankets, food, and toys that various human crew members had brought, and were starting to relax, though they still jumped at sudden sounds and watched the door nervously. Sat with them often, trying to learn more of their language while teaching them some English words. It was slow work but was smart and picked up new words quickly. Was quieter, still traumatized by what she had been through, but she had started to smile occasionally. "Human strange," said one afternoon, practicing her galactic common. "Why you care, we not human children." Thought about how to explain it in words she would understand. Humans believe all children are worth protecting. It doesn't matter what species they are. When a child needs help, we help. Considered this, not all species think this way. "I know," said, "but that's one of the things that makes us human." Outside the medical bay, the crisis was escalating. Greg received constant updates from Earth's diplomatic service. The Galactic Council had called emergency sessions, with representatives from dozens of species arguing about what should happen next. "It's splitting the council," Greg explained during one of their conversations. "Some species support Earth's position, races that have strong family bonds and protective instincts toward their young. They're saying we're right to question diplomatic immunity when it allows child abuse." "And the others?" asked. "The others say we're being too emotional, that we're threatening the whole foundation of diplomatic relations. They argue that if we can override immunity for this, what's to stop anyone from claiming humanitarian crisis whenever they want something?" "They're not wrong about the precedent," admitted, "but sometimes precedents need to be set." Greg nodded. "That's exactly what Earth's government is saying. They're arguing that the galaxy needs new standards, that just because something is legal doesn't make it right." The station had become tense. Ambassador was still demanding his children back, growing more desperate as the situation dragged on. Other diplomats had arrived, some supporting him, others remaining strangely quiet. Had noticed that not all agreed with his actions, though they were careful about saying so publicly. Then something unexpected happened. A woman named arrived at the medical bay, requesting to speak with. Greg checked her credentials carefully before allowing her inside. Looked at the children for a long moment, her expression sad. Then she turned to. "I am Ambassador's former mate," she said in perfect galactic common. "The mother of these children." Stared at her in confusion, but said her mother died. "That is what told them," said quietly. "The truth is that I fled from him 3 years ago. I could not take the children with me because law gives fathers absolute custody. I have been trying to find a way to save them ever since." She moved closer to where and sat. Both children were staring at her with wide eyes, not quite believing what they were seeing. Knelt down and spoke to them in their own language, tears running down her face. Let out a cry and threw herself into her mother's arms, with following immediately after. And Lisa gave them privacy, stepping to the other side of the medical bay. Greg was already recording everything on his tablet, knowing this testimony would be crucial. After several minutes, stood and faced them, the children holding her hands tightly. "I will testify," she said. "I will tell the council everything. Has been abusive for years to me and to our children. I have scars, medical records, witnesses. I stayed silent because I was afraid and because law protected him. But I will not be silent anymore." "Why now?" Greg asked. "What changed?" Looked at, because a human showed me that someone would fight for my children. All this time I thought no one would help, that the law was too strong. But you did not care about the law. You cared about them. That gave me courage." "Will your testimony be enough?" asked. "I don't know," admitted. "But there are others like me, other who have suffered under our own laws. Your actions have started something, Officer Martinez. People are talking, questioning, demanding change. Even if the council rules against you, you have already won something important. Over the next few hours, more people came forward. 3 other women about similar abuse, all protected by diplomatic immunity or family law. Representatives from other species shared stories of victims in their own cultures, cases where legal protection had enabled cruelty. The Galactic Council was forced to listen to all of it. Earth's diplomats presented everything, making their case that diplomatic immunity could not be absolute when it protected such clear violations of basic decency. Watched the proceedings on a monitor in the medical bay. He saw Philip speaking passionately about human values and the need for the galaxy to have higher standards. He saw other species representatives arguing back, some agreeing, some defending traditional structures. But he also saw something else. He saw young aliens of various species gathering outside council buildings across the galaxy, holding signs supporting the children. He saw protests on multiple worlds, not just human ones. The story had touched something deeper than species loyalty. "They're listening," Greg said, watching the same broadcasts. "Not all of them, but enough. This is changing the conversation." Ambassador tried one more time to reach the children. He arrived at the medical bay with a security detail, demanding entry. But this time, he did not have the support he expected. Station security stood their ground, following new orders from Earth's territorial claim. Stood outside the door, visible on the monitors. "This is kidnapping," he shouted. "You have stolen my children. I will see you all punished for this." Walked to the speaker with and standing behind him. They were no longer cowering. With their mother present, they had found strength they did not know they had. "Ambassador," said calmly, "your former mate is here. She is testifying about years of abuse. Your children are safe and they will stay safe. Nothing you say will change that." "You have no right," began. "I have every right," interrupted. "The right of any decent person to protect children from harm. You can argue about diplomatic immunity and legal technicalities all you want, but at the end of the day, you hurt kids. That's all that matters to me." His face twisted with rage. "You think you're better than me. You think your species has the moral authority to judge mine." "I think anyone who hurts children deserves to be judged," said. "Species doesn't matter. Right and wrong aren't different just because you cross a species line." For a moment seemed ready to explode. Then his expression changed, becoming calculating. "This won't last," he said. "The council will rule in my favor. They always do. Diplomatic immunity is absolute." "We'll see," said, and cut the communication. The council's vote came 2 hours later. Greg received the notification and gathered everyone in the medical bay, and sat with their mother, holding her hands, stood nearby, prepared for whatever came next. "The council has voted," Greg read from his tablet. "By a narrow margin, they have upheld diplomatic immunity. Ambassadors' rights are confirmed." Felt his heart sink. After everything, they were going to lose. But Greg was still reading. "However, the council has also voted to create new protocols. Children claiming abuse may now seek temporary asylum while their cases are investigated. A new committee will be formed to review all claims involving diplomatic immunity and child welfare. And in this specific case, pending investigation, and are granted temporary asylum under human protection." The medical bay erupted in cheers. Lisa hugged Greg, who was grinning widely, looked confused, and explained quickly in their language. When understood, she ran to and hugged him tightly, with joining her. "Safe," said, crying. "Really safe now." "Really safe," confirmed, his own eyes wet. But Greg raised his hand, asking for quiet. "There's more. Ambassador's diplomatic immunity has been suspended pending investigation into the abuse allegations. If the investigation confirms the testimony, he will face trial under law, and his immunity may be permanently revoked." Sat down, overwhelmed by the news. They had actually done it. It was not a complete victory, and the children's future was still uncertain. But it was a start. The galaxy had acknowledged that some things mattered more than diplomatic convenience. "What happens now?" Lisa asked. "Now we wait for the investigation," Greg said. "It could take months, but in the meantime the children stay with us. Has requested asylum as well, and Earth has granted it. They'll be together while everything gets sorted out." Looked at the small family reunited in the medical bay, and were talking excitedly with their mother, months of fear finally lifting. They were not completely safe yet, but they were safer than they had been in years. "Did we really change anything?" asked quietly. "Or did we just save 2 children?" Greg smiled. "You saved 2 children, but those 2 children made the galaxy start questioning things it had taken for granted. That's how change happens. One person does the right thing, and it inspires others to do the same." 3 months had passed since that night in the maintenance corridor when first found and hiding in the shadows. The investigation into Ambassador's actions had concluded, and the results were everything it hoped for. The evidence was overwhelming. Medical records, testimony from and others, and even statements from citizens who had witnessed behavior over the years. The investigative committee had no choice but to recommend that his diplomatic immunity be permanently revoked. The council had voted to accept the recommendation, and now faced trial in his own courts for the abuse of his children. Stood outside a human residential building on Trade Station Meridian, watching as and played in a small garden area with other children. They looked different now, healthier and happier. The fear that had haunted their eyes was slowly fading, replaced by the natural curiosity and joy that children should have. Sat on a bench nearby, watching her daughters with a smile. She had been granted full asylum by Earth, and all 3 of them were now under human protection. The government had agreed to the arrangement, quietly relieved to have the embarrassing situation resolved. "They're doing well," Lisa said, coming to stand beside. She had been monitoring the children's recovery, both physical and psychological. "The nightmares are less frequent now, is even starting to talk about what happened without getting scared." "That's good," said. "What about?" "She's slower to heal, but she's getting there. Having her mother back has made a huge difference, and they both talk about you constantly. You're their hero." Shook his head. "I'm not a hero, I just did what anyone should do." "But not everyone would have," Lisa pointed out. "That's what makes it matter." The past 3 months had been transformative not just for the children, but for the entire galaxy. The incident had sparked debates on hundreds of worlds about the limits of diplomatic immunity and the rights of children. Dozens of species had begun reviewing their own laws, looking for ways to better protect their young. Earth had emerged from the crisis with unexpected respect. Many species that had viewed humans as too emotional or impulsive now saw them as principled and willing to stand for their beliefs. The human delegation to the Galactic Council had grown more influential, with other species seeking their input on moral and ethical questions. Greg approached from the building entrance, carrying a data pad. "I have news," he said. "The Galactic Council just voted to establish a permanent committee for child protection. They're asking humans to chair it." "Are they?" asked, amused by the irony. "The same council that threatened to kick us out 3 months ago." "They recognize that we were right," Greg said. "Not everyone agrees with our methods, but even our critics admit that the outcome was just. The committee will have the authority to investigate any claims of child abuse across species lines, regardless of diplomatic immunity." "Will it actually work?" Lisa asked skeptically. "Or is it just for show?" "That depends on who runs it and how seriously people take it," Greg replied. "But it's better than what we had before, which was nothing." Watched Chase around the garden, both of them laughing. It was hard to believe these were the same terrified children he had found cowering in a dark corridor. They had been given a chance to heal, to grow up without fear. That was worth all the trouble it had caused. "How's the investigation going with the other victims?" asked. 37 cases have been reported so far, Greg said. Children from a dozen different species, all suffering under laws that protected their abusers. The committee is reviewing each one, and several species have already changed their laws in response. It's not fast, but it's happening. Noticed and ran over, with following close behind. Their galactic common had improved dramatically and could now speak it almost fluently. "Come play," said, grabbing his hand. "We're teaching the other children a game from our world." "I have to talk with Greg and Lisa," said gently, "but maybe later." "Promise?" asked. A word she had learned took on special meaning when said it. "Promise," confirmed. Satisfied, ran back to the other children. Waved at before following her sister, no longer the silent, traumatized child she had been. "They're good kids," Lisa said. "They deserve the chance they're getting." "All kids deserve that chance," replied. "That's what we're trying to build, right? A galaxy where children are protected, where they can grow up without fear." "One case at a time," Greg agreed. "Speaking of which, the committee wants to offer you a position. They need people who understand enforcement, who can investigate cases and protect children when necessary." Considered it. Part of him wanted to go back to his simple security work, to return to the quiet life he had before all of this. But he thought about all the children out there who might be suffering right now, who needed someone to stand up for them the way he had stood up for and. "I'll think about it," he said. "Don't think too long," Greg said. "We already have 50 cases waiting for investigation." The station's communication system chimed, and his personal device received a message. It was from Phillips, Earth's senior diplomat. He opened it and read quickly. "What is it?" Lisa asked, seeing his expression change. "Earth's government wants to give me a medal," said, somewhat embarrassed. "They're calling me a symbol of human values and courage." "You don't seem happy about it," Greg observed. "I'm not a symbol," said. "I'm just someone who saw kids in trouble and helped them. If that makes me unusual, then something's wrong with the galaxy." "Maybe that's exactly why they want to honor you," Lisa suggested, "to remind everyone what we should all be doing." That evening received another visitor. Ambassador's trial had concluded that afternoon and came to share the results. She sat in his quarters, looking more peaceful than he had ever seen her. "He was found guilty," she said simply. "Law may permit some forms of discipline, but what he did went far beyond that. He has been stripped of all titles and positions. He will spend the next 10 years in a rehabilitation facility." "How do you feel about that?" asked. Was quiet for a moment. "I feel free," she finally said. "For the first time in years, I don't have to be afraid of him. My daughters don't have to be afraid. That's worth more than any punishment he receives." "What will you do now?" "Earth has offered us citizenship," said. "Wants to accept. She says she wants to grow up among humans, that she wants to be like you." Smiled at that. "She doesn't need to be like me. She just needs to be herself, safe and happy." "She can be both," said. "And maybe someday she'll help another child the way you helped her. That's how change spreads, isn't it? One person inspiring another until eventually the whole galaxy is different." After left stood at the window of his quarters looking out at the stars. The galaxy was vast, filled with countless species and cultures, each with their own values and traditions. But some things should be universal. The protection of children, the basic right to grow up without fear, the willingness to help those who could not help themselves. He thought about the path ahead. 50 cases waiting for investigation, and probably thousands more that had not been reported yet. It would be hard work, fighting against laws and traditions that had stood for centuries. But it would also be the most important work he could do. His communicator chimed. It was, sending him a simple message in the English she had been learning. "Thank you, you are my hero. I will be brave like you." Smiled and sent a reply. "You are already brave. You saved yourself and your sister. I just helped." He looked back at the stars and made his decision. Tomorrow he would accept the committee's offer. There were too many children out there who needed help, and if his actions with and had shown anything, it was that one person could make a difference. The galaxy was slow to change, but it was changing. New laws were being written, new protections put in place, new standards being established. It had started with two small children hiding in a maintenance corridor and one human who refused to look away. Remembered something his father had told him when he was young. The measure of a civilization isn't how powerful it is or how advanced its technology. It's how it treats its most vulnerable members. By that measure, the galaxy still had a long way to go, but at least now it was moving in the right direction. 6 months later, stood at a ceremony on Earth, accepting his medal in front of representatives from dozens of species. But his mind was not on the honor or the recognition. He was thinking about a report he had received that morning, another case of children in danger, this time on a mining colony in the outer systems. After the ceremony, he would go there. He would investigate, gather evidence, and if necessary, he would stand between those children and whoever was hurting them. It was what he did now, what he had chosen to do with his life. As the human president pinned the medal to his uniform, looked out at the crowd, he saw and sitting with their mother in the front row, both of them wearing Earth citizenship badges proudly, gave him a small wave and smiled back. He thought about what she had written in her message, "You are my hero," but knew the truth. Heroes were not people who did extraordinary things. Heroes were people who did the right thing when it was needed, even when it was hard, even when it cost them something. And by that definition, there were heroes everywhere, in every species, just waiting for the moment when they would be needed. The galaxy had learned something important over the past 6 months. It had learned that some principles were worth fighting for, that some lines should never be crossed, and that sometimes the members of the council, the emotional and unpredictable humans, might just have something valuable to teach the rest of them. It had learned that children mattered, regardless of species or status or diplomatic immunity. It had learned that laws were made by people and could be changed by people when they no longer served justice. And it had learned that sometimes all it took to change the galaxy was one person refusing to look away when a child needed help. Martinez had been that person, but he knew he would not be the last. The change had started, and there was no stopping it now.